Hello everyone, I'm Ina Man. Welcome to Higher Ground, the only show dedicated to finding common ground in the contentious debate over BC's natural resources. First Nations in the province have a special role in the process around the resource development in BC. The issues are complex and concern all British Columbians. So today, in the second episode of our holiday series, we're reaching back to an interview we did with John Jack, a councillor from HUU-AY-AHT First Nation on Vancouver Island. Resource Works Director Stewart Muir caught up with Councillor Jack via Skype at his house near Port Alberni and Clayoquot.
John, thanks for joining us today on Higher Ground.
Thanks for having me.
There's been a lot of news coverage about First Nations protests in regards to extraction of BC's resources. From your point of view, how do First Nations communities feel about resources in this province?
Well, I think First Nations communities feel as though the resource sector is an important source of wealth generation for the entirety of the province, but it's something that they haven't necessarily had access to. And I think that's their main point of contention.
And what is different now, do you think?
Well, now I think with the Williams case decision, otherwise known as the Chilcotin case, there is the Supreme Court ruling that states that First Nations need to be consulted at the front end and any major project that was to go ahead. And it really cements the understanding that First Nations not only should be consulted, but they should have a hand in how the resources are accessed and developed.
Now, there are those who've said that the Williams decision you cite is going to shut down the resource sector in BC. What do you think about that?
I don't think it will necessarily shut down the resource sector. I think what it may lead to, though, is a complete change in the way that businesses may approach First Nations, and it may have a slight modification to the overall business models of resource sector companies. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do think that any doors that may be closed would likely open a few others as well.
John, is there common ground to be found between First Nations and those who support the resource industry in British Columbia?
There is common ground. I think there's a natural alliance between First Nations and the resource sector simply because First Nations have resources that are largely undeveloped or underdeveloped. Therefore, we're going to have to access the expertise that the resource sector businesses have in order to really see a change in the standard of living for First Nations communities. Now, I think the resource sector does get a bit of a bad rap, and it's a bit unfounded simply because there are principled ways to approach developing the resource sector, and First Nations can be a part of that and therefore really add to the legitimacy of the whole idea.
John, you sound pro-resource. Do you get flack for that from inside your community?
Yes, I do. I do get flack from being pro-resource in our community. But the one thing is that we have to raise awareness as to how the economy works and how my First Nation will actually get out of poverty and make a living and raise the standard of living for our people. It starts with resources, but that's not the end. We're not just going to be a resource-based economy, but we have to start somewhere, and the resources are where we start.
And that's it for Higher Ground this week. Make sure to visit our website at resourceworks.com, sign up for our e-newsletter, and don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For Resource Works, I'm Ina Man. Thanks for watching.